What you all are watching is a video of famous people morphing into reptilian characteristics before your very eyes. Is it possible that famous people in Hollywood, the British royal family, powerful political figures all over the world, is it possible that they have so much reptilian DNA in them that sometimes they just can't help them little selves, and we can actually see with our eyes these reptilian characteristics? Well, tonight on the Midnight Ride, we're going to be exploring this. Is there any basis in fact or any biblical reality that would support this to be a possibility? We're going to be showing you things that are just absolutely amazing. And are these things real? Could they be a hoax? Well, we're going to be exploring that tonight, and we're going to be showing evidence that is just absolutely astounding. We're going to be buttressing the case for this being a possibility from some sources and material that you've probably never heard before, just like this. But after all, that is what we do on the Midnight Ride.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Midnight Ride. I want to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn, into the Now You See TV studios for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, we have a happy little broadcast about the end of the world. Reptilian royals. It's going to be coming in with the hot sauce. So you want to get your popcorn ready for this one. And the best thing about it, you're not going to have to wait very long because we are now
live. What's up again, guys? Back with another amazing episode. This one's going to be something that you will not want to miss. And so make sure you guys stick around. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know where you're at in the chat and out there in the comment section for those of you that are watching this after the live broadcast. With that being said, hold tight. We're going to be right back after a word from our sponsors. Many mainstream companies put dangerous chemicals in their products that contribute to disease and disability. This is why it's so important that we take care in the products that we consume. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it is the covering to your temple. Our sponsor tonight is Sugar and Spice Soap Company. They create all natural and biblically clean soaps and beauty products. They even have a soap for Midnight Ride listeners. Use coupon code NYSTV to receive 10% off all your purchases. Link in the description. If this is true, then our country is in a lot of trouble.
We would have these trips, these special trips.
But he said, my daddy takes the bodies to the grocery store and he grinds them up and puts it in the hamburger. And nobody ever knows it.
How can kids 6, 8, 10 years old be describing rituals that come from a book like the Book of the Dead?
It's hard to get your mind around people being capable of this kind of evil.
All right, guys, we are back. Thank you so much. If there's anything you're interested at all in there, check out the links below. All the stuff that we have is there. Also, check out FOJCradio.com. That is where you can find David and Donna Carrico's ministry stuff that they've been doing for over the last couple scores, so 40 years plus. And so make sure you check that out. Also, check out nystv.org, exclusive content, stuff that you don't get just anywhere else. And other links are in the description below, so check those out. With that being said, David, I think we're ready to get on the ride unless you got something you want to add.
Well, I might make mention that Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, for all of you that would go to FOJCradio.com and hit the link there to our Rumble channel, you will be watching our JFK Assassination Anniversary Show. We did one here on the Midnight Ride, and we're going to do another one. We're not even going to talk about any of the same things. We're going to be taking a deep dive, and you know you're going to like it. So that'll be 8 p.m. Central Time, Sunday night. All right, then.
Very good. Let's get started, David. This is going to be a hot one, so we want to make sure that we give it ample time to talk about the stuff that you guys are waiting to hear, because we promise you that if you stick around, you are going to enjoy what you listen to, so stick around.
All right. And here we see a young lady that is probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular entertainer around. And Taylor Swift, as many of you know, put out a little message this week that the Swifties, it's almost time to shed their physical bodies and ascend. And it looks like little Taylor done and beamed up, because where are her eyes? You know, that she just does not look right. You know, I tell you what, there's just something wrong here that doesn't pass the smell test. There's something very, very unnatural about this young lady. Now, rumor has it, and far be us from anyone would accuse us of being conspiratorial, but there are people that actually think that Taylor Swift is a clone of Zena LaVey. And all I can say is, there it is. Check it out. Make your own decision. There is an uncanny similarity. And what we see with Miss Swift, she is swiftly going darker and darker and darker. Her eyes and her whole persona and her entire lifestyle. Something is not right here. And we see the same thing with so many people in Hollywood, that there are things just deeply, deeply wrong. It's more than just sinfulness. It is rotten literally to the core and literally rotten down to the DNA. Strange things going on in the gold mine, as Jim Morrison would say.
You know, it's interesting. Like last week, we did a show talking about the possibility of 33 million or more, probably more, fallen angels inhabiting the earth, with whether it be inside or on the crust in the top of the earth around with us, maybe shifting into things. And it's interesting that we kind of tied in the stars, the angels, with these people, and we're starting to see a lot of them that are starting to kind of bring a cult following, and it looks like this is a dangerous one. This reminds me of the one where they drank the Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
You know, getting ready to leave their bodies, and a lot. You know, as you know, angels like worship. That's why people built idols and all these different things for their children, the demonic entities. But these people love it when people worship them, and for her to be able to have this much influence as a Satanist or as a person who is in a high power of witchcraft of some sort is really doesn't look good for America. Let's put it that way. But she's just one of them. She's one of thousands of these people.
Yeah, and what we're seeing with Miss Swift, excuse the pun, but her followers are, just like you say, swiftly becoming a cult. There are people that are so crazy about her, they would do anything for her. It is getting a little scary. And, you know, now they're all, little Taylor said, we're getting ready to leave her bodies. Well, I think her eyeballs might have already left the building. So we just want to keep an eye on that one. Now, we're going to look at a page here. This is from a book called The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain by Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. And we're going to be looking this evening at the area, and you see here at the very top of the page, we see the Avebury Stone Circle. As you come down south, you come into Stonehenge, and by the way, this is another whole purview. This is crop circle ground zero. The most profound crop circles ever are right in this area between Avebury and Stonehenge. Not a coincidence. And as we come south here, we see an amazing concentration of giant artifacts that we're going to be sharing with you. And we're going to be bringing in some unique layers of understanding that I bet you've not heard before. But what we're going to be doing is just, well, you know, do we have any reason to believe that there could be reptilian blood in the British royals? And we have very much reason to believe that, and to believe that indeed there is reptilian blood in many of the famous people and Hollywood and politics. Now, this is the book that I referenced, and this book is a hoot. Really enjoyed this book. The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira. And on page 362, there's a concept here that we're going to be expanding on. This is also, there's another writer that I have read that has had this opinion, and I'm coming to this opinion myself. And it says here on page 362, there have been suggestions that Enoch may have traveled to Britain and was involved in either building stone circles or recording their astronomical science. We just finished this week on our Book of Enoch commentary, which we're going through. It's on the Now You See TV subscription channel. This week we recorded Enoch chapter 72, which is in the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries, and we talked about this very thing, and we brought out scriptures from the Book of Enoch that would lead us to believe that Enoch could have been looking at megalithic structures in the area of Britain that gave him knowledge about the movement of the heavenly luminaries. And I'm coming to be where, and of course, this is theoretical. We can't just absolutely prove this, but the more and more evidence I'm coming all the time leads me to believe that Enoch did go into the area of Great Britain and into the area of the Arctic regions.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I remember going through, and I can't remember what chapter it was where we talked about Enoch actually walking off into this area. But man, I think you got the reference in here. But it's amazing to me the amount of stuff that Enoch, which is quoted in the Bible, in the book of Jude, it says he prophesied, that the detail he goes into about this stuff that he experiences is pretty amazing. And for those of you that have never read the book of Enoch, I suggest it. You know, I had a guy ask me, he's like, look, man, I'm trying to get my children interested in the Bible. I'm trying to get all these different things. And he said, is there any other, extracurricular books of the Bible that that might get them interested? And I said, are they interested in superheroes? Are they interested in all these different things? And he said, yeah, super interested. They like Marvel Comics and all that. And I said, well, I know for me, when I read the book of Enoch, it really sparked a lot of interest and a lot of interesting things that started to come loose in the Bible. So he got that book for his son, and lo and behold, within like a few months, this kid was wanting to know more, wanting to learn more about the Bible and wanting to see more about it. So it's really interesting and a great book to study. And not to plug everything that we do, but the Book of Enoch video commentary is one of the things that I think that I'm the most thankful that we do out of all of them.
I'm a little stoked about it myself.
Yeah.
And I was coming up to this section on the Heavenly Luminaries section. I said, man, I just don't get all what's going on here. And I have to believe the Lord is helping us, because there have just been all kinds of concepts that's helping me understand this better and better. Yep. And if you really want to put some bubbles in your soda, just check that out. Because I tell you what, it's pretty good, even if me and John are doing it. It's pretty frosty. I'm really stoked about enjoying it. And it just gets better and better as we go along. So that's there for you if you choose to check it out. Now, let's look at a couple of scriptures here from the book of Enoch, chapter 61 and verse 2. And I asked the angel, saying unto him, why have those angels taken these cords and gone off? And he said unto me, they have gone to measure. Now, if you have ever seen any of the recreations on the History Channel or Nat Geo, where they show how these megalithic structures were made, they were made with cords. They would stretch cords out, and they would get the alignments with the sun, and they would measure them very precisely with cords. So, here we have the angels taking the cords are going off. Now, here again, we have to open our mind to the possibility that certainly a lot of these things were fallen angel worship centers. But it is also possible that, and we know it's a fact if the book of Enoch has any credibility, that some of these megalithic structures could have been originally built with instructions from the good angels. We cannot rule that out. And right here, if the book of Enoch has any credibility, we certainly have to at least put this idea on the table.
Yep.
Now in verse 5, and these measures shall reveal all the secrets of the depths of the earth. Now, we've talked a lot, and in our last book of the Enoch commentary, we talked about the Egyptian concept of the Duat, the underworld. And we were talking about the 12 portals in the book of Enoch, chapter 72. And the Egyptians believed in the same 12 portals, and they actually believed that there were times when there was actually, this is kind of like Stranger Things from the sci-fi series, where there was an underneath world that actually received sunlight at certain periods of time. Very interesting concept, and certainly not out of line biblical, which we've talked quite a bit about the inner earth, the hollow earth, and a lot of these concepts. But it says, and these measures shall reveal all the secrets of the depths of the earth. Just like here we have a megalithic structure, and they are set with different portals to show you just when the movements of the heavenly luminaries, and also the secrets of the depth of the earth. And it is no doubt that perhaps the structure that was built is not there, and perhaps this could have been Stonehenge or the Avebury Circle, which we're going to be looking at, that are incomplete and not totally as they once were. But it says, and those who have been destroyed by the desert, and those who have been devoured by the beasts, and those who have been devoured by the fish of the sea, that they may return and stay themselves on the day of the elect one, for none shall be destroyed before the Lord of spirits, and none can be destroyed. So we have to, and we have to at least put this idea on the table here. Now, this is a book by Christopher Knight, Robert Lomas. It's entitled Uriel's Machine. And in the book of Enoch, Uriel is the angel that is in charge of the angels that move the heavenly luminaries. Now, for those of you, and I know we've got a lot of new listeners tonight, and in biblical cosmology and in the book of Enoch, stars are equated with angels, both good and bad. And in this book here, Uriel's Machine, they have the theory that Enoch, well, just like I read there from Mr. Vieira and Hugh Newman, that Enoch did go to England, and chapter 7 of this book is entitled The Enoch Zone. The Enoch Zone, and they call this area, now the area we showed you there, in from Mr. Vieira and Mr. Newman's book, that began with the Avebury Circle and comes south. And we're going to kind of take you on a panorama this evening. We're going to start with the Avebury Circle, and we're going to take a little trip down through the Enoch Zone. And we're going to show you some absolutely amazing things that would absolutely give us reason to believe that this was, at the time of the antediluvian world, if there were a greater concentration of Nephilim and giants on earth, I don't know where it would have been. And we're going to show you the deep, deep roots in their own history and their own literature that would give us every reason to believe that Nephilim DNA is in the very root of British royalty. Now, on page 152 of this book, it says, the most famous stone circle, Stonehenge, in the country of Wiltshire is close to the southern limit of the zone described by Enoch, as we also have seen at around 8000 BC, some unknown group erected 2 large wooden poles where its car park stands today. This would put us back within the time frame of the biblical Enoch. We're talking back in the antediluvian world, and he gets into a lot of detail, and I'm not just sure about all of his calculations, but I do believe that this theory, just based upon the scriptures and based upon the book of Enoch, that we have reason to believe here that we might have something here in this concept. Now we'll look at another scripture. This is Enoch 79:6. Such is the picture and sketch of every luminary which Uriel the archangel, who is their leader, showed me. Now here we have Enoch claiming that Uriel showed him a sketch and a picture, and he's not showing him a Polaroid. And I believe what he is seeing is an actual sketch on the ground of a megalithic structure, and it's known that Stonehenge is literally a clock and an observatory that gives you the movements of the heavenly luminaries. It is now known that right here in our area, that there are Indian mounds and structures that are aligned with the heavenly luminaries. We've got them right in our area and all over the world. That this was something that is a commonplace trait in these megalithic structures. And there's a scripture here. It says, with chains shall they be bound, and in their assemblage place of destruction shall they be imprisoned, and all their work shall vanish from the face of the earth. And I believe that what we're looking at Stonehenge, Pumapunko, Chichen Itza, and so many of these sites that we're talking about are obviously incomplete pictures of these works of the giants. And I believe at the time that Enoch lived that there were more complete structures of these megalithic, and I think quite possibly that some of these started off as good angelic projects and were corrupted as this menace spread from the Genesis 6 scenario all across the earth. Now, we'll have another very interesting text here. This is from the book of Jasher that would also buttress this theory that Enoch did get around, bless his little heart. He did some moving, and according to the book of Jasher, when Enoch was taken up, he was in a very cold place. and we have connected this in other midnight rides with the Arctic regions. But in Jasher, the 3rd chapter, in the 38th verse, and all those kings went to the place, and they found the earth there filled with snow. And upon the snow were large stones of snow. And, there have been large pyramids found in Antarctica and also in the northern regions. Just makes me wonder. And one said to the other, "Come, let us break through the snow and see, perhaps the men that remained with Enoch are dead and are now under the stones of snow." And they searched but could not find him, for he had ascended into heaven. So according to the book of Jasher, we have Enoch in an area that is very cold. So I'm just saying, I've got a lot of things here that I'm finding and that I'm seeing are causing me to take the theory that is put forth by Mr. Newman, Mr. Vieira, and Knight and Lomas, that indeed this area in England could be the Enoch zone. Now, we're going to take a little trip down the Enoch zone, and we're going to look. We're right here at the top of what would be called the Enoch zone, and the Avebury Circle, which is very close to Stonehenge, and probably there'll be some time we'll take a deep dive into the crop circle manifestations in this area. It is just, this is crop circle ground zero right here, and that's not a coincidence, is it? A crop circle UFO activity, and of course the UFO activity, this is just the continued operation of the fallen ones and the Nephilim, their brood. But here we see this amazing structure here in Avebury. You see here this huge stones around this huge circle. And what we basically have here, we have the recreation of a portal. And these are just basically, I call them Nephilim churches, where they got together to access portals. Now, over here to the right in this picture, you can see these stones, how large they are. They're large, and I mean, this thing is huge, this Avebury Circle, and this is what is called a hinge. And we see these hinges all over this good old flat earth. And also, we see a smaller signature of this in the spirals. And spirals are found in the American West, the petroglyphs. We see these spirals. We see them out on Skinwalker Ranch. We see the spirals here. Now, here again, you see just how large these things are. Huge. Who put these things there? I mean, there's thousands of these huge stones in this huge circle. And this is called the Avebury Circle and the Avebury Hinge. Now, it'd be easy for me to believe that it had to be someone pretty strong and pretty big and pretty strong to set these rascals in place.
Yeah, it had to be something huge. But I mean, you see these things everywhere. It's interesting too because, in the Book of Enoch episode that we did, we talked about the zodiac and the 12 portals and the gates that the sun goes through and how all of that lines up. And I wonder too, because the portals that the sun goes through and these line up of these stones. If I could be a fly on the wall a few thousand years ago just to see how this stuff worked, it would be amazing. I would love to see that.
Yeah. And the one scripture in the book of Enoch leads me to believe that there was a time where there was a lot more to the Avebury Circle and Stonehenge than we see now. Yeah. It could have even been one huge complex. Now, let's go to the land of Israel, and let's look at a hinge. And this is called Gilgal Rephaim, and this is right at the place where the Bible describes that Elijah was taken up, And sometimes I just got to preach it like I feel it, and the way I believe it went down right here. And like I say, this is a portal, and they were having them a little Nephilim church, and the purpose of portals, is to access portals into the other realms in the second and the third heaven and into the heart of the earth and possibly beyond the ice wall. And I believe that these old giants and their followers, they were doing them a little Nephilim church here, and they looked out and there was old Elijah, and the chariots come down, and he just, see you later, boys. Here's how it's done. Here's how you would ascend in the third heaven. And that's what these things are all about. It's about illegal access into the third heaven. It's going back. The angels wanted, it's just like Isaiah 14, I will ascend. And this is what it's all about. And this is how we understand the portals. We understand the spirals and all of these things. And you can even see pictures of galaxies. What they tell us are galaxies, but they're really portals. You can see them spiraling in the sky. Yeah. And more people are photographing spirals in the sky. They're appearing more and more often, and individuals are photographing these things.
Yeah, and to think, these angels at one time that were, before they were here on earth, they had this technology in order to move about through crafts. We talked about on one of our episodes where we talked about the cherubs and the wheel within the wheels that Ezekiel describes. And so they had this technology, this ability, and this desire to move move like they're moving. And so I'm with you, David. I think a lot of this is remnant of that technology that they used at the time. And, we'll probably talk about this, but I think that explains a lot why over these sites there's so many churches and so many federal facilities and UN facilities over these sites. It has to be.
And if you look, you can look at pictures of Gilgal Rephaim. There's probably millions of big stones here, and they're just piled together. Now, that would have took so many man-hours of work. It's just phenomenal. And, I mean, they're not little bitty. So, there we go. We have the Gilgal Rephaim, and we see these also right here in good old America. And this is a picture from page 94. This is from On the Trail of the Nephilim by L.A. Marzulli. And this is a drawing of a hinge. It says one of two hinges at Charleston, West Virginia, was 666 feet in circumference. Well, I wonder why it's 666 feet in circumference. Is it a coincidence that the Amorite number for the Sun Father was used in solar temples in the Ohio Valley? We have right here in America, we have right in our area in Indiana and in Kentucky, the absolute conclusive proof for anyone that's open-minded that there are Canaanite and Amorite relics right here. I mean, the idea of isolationism, and this is basically the theory that is taught in secular schools, that there was no communication in ancient times between different civilizations, and there absolutely was in the antediluvian world. There was the pretty much the comparison of the one world order, where there was literally a worldwide culture, where there was communication and travel, and a very sophisticated level of civilization far beyond what we're able to duplicate today in many areas.
And people have to remember, too, that at one time, and I believe this because the Bible speaks of it, and also many, many people believe this to be true, but at one time, all of the continents were together in one spot. So we had an easy ability for a one-world government, and it's really clear to me that all of these sites that have the same exact gods, maybe with a different language, but the same exact serpent gods, the same exact monuments, the same exact worship tactics, the rituals that they do, it's no coincidence, because at one time, as we read in the scripture, at one time the entire world was subdued by giants, by fallen angels, and then even after that subdued by Nimrod. So we have this time period, and then the earth wasn't divided until the days of Peleg, according to the Bible.
There are so many interesting things. Just one, for instance, we could throw out so many. But in the first episode of Cities Lost in Time, Brian Reese and I'll be floating this out probably about the first Sunday night in December. And just one of the many instances in King Tut's tomb, they found a little crate full of boomerangs. And the Egyptians were very skillful with boomerangs. Well, guess where they turn up? The boomerang turns up in Chichen Itza. And they're boomerangs. Well, just like the Egyptian boomerangs. And that's just one of many, 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 many things that we can prove the interrelatedness of these ancient cultures all over the world. Yep. This picture here is from 97 of the same book, On the Trail of the Nephilim by L.R. Marzulli. And it says here, I'll just read you a little of the text. In Lexington, Kentucky, and at Charleston, West Virginia, stood hinges that were 555 feet in circumference. 555 was symbolic of the sacred marriage because multiplied by pi, it equals 1746, or the sum total of 666 plus 1080. Also, 555 times 12 inches equals 6,660. The number 555.5 needs to be stretched to achieve the 1746. This numerological codex was adopted by the Masons and explains why the Washington Monument is 555 feet in height. Also note the 33-foot gateway. Now, nobody with a rational mind can attribute this to coincidence. You just cannot do it. It says many of the gateways in the earthworks in Ohio were 33 feet wide. 33 is the square root of 1080. And, of course, there's many, the symbolic meaning of 33. We've talked about this in a lot of broadcasts. And one of the most significant, when Joshua came into the promised land, on the east side of the Jordan, he drove out two kings, Og, the king of Bashan, and Sihon, the king of the Amorites. And guess how many he drove out on the west side of the Jordan? 31. 33 Nephilim kings were disposed by the Israelite army. They're still sore about that. They're still sore about that. They really are. And Satan is wanting to reestablish his kingdom, and that's what this is about. It's about a war between the Most High God, the seed of the woman, the seed of the serpent, and this is playing out in a cosmic battle that we are living, and we're a part of this, and it's really exciting times. Now, we have here the Glastonbury Abbey, and this is indeed a very, very fascinating place. And this is the place, and all of this too, boy, we're going to put another whole layer of understanding of it. This is the area that was called Camelot. Well, tomorrow night we're going to be doing the JFK assassination broadcast. The Kennedys were likened to Camelot. And we have here the legendary place of King Arthur. And here in this abbey, this was the place where many believe in, this is tradition and people dispute it and all this and all that. But if you would go to the Glastonbury Abbey today, the Glastonbury Abbey, which I believe this is in Scotland, I believe this whole area, the British Isles, this is supposedly the grave there of King Arthur, where he is buried right there. Now, we've talked about this a lot, and right there it is. The site of King Arthur's tomb in the year 1191, the body of King Arthur and his queen were said to have been found on the south side of the Lady Chapel on the 19th of April, 1278. Their remains were removed in the presence of King Edward I and Queen Eleanor to a black marble tomb on this site. This tomb survived until the dissolution of the abbey in 1539. So this is the stuff that legends are made out of. This is the, is just brain food to me. I love it. Now, this is something that John put on the table in a midnight ride on Attila the Hun. And this is a book, Attila, King of the Huns by William Herbert. And he floats a very, very interesting idea that I think has legs. And I'll just read a little bit here about what Mr. Herbert said, and I'll let John expand upon this. He did a entire midnight ride on this. And he writes this. He said, whether such a man as Patrick, and it's talking about St. Patrick, the legend of driving the snakes out and all that. But he said, whether such a man as Patrick actually existed and was sent on a secret mission by Attila to prepare the way for himself as Antichrist, as we read in the Scandinavian sagas that Attila sent Herbert on a mission to King Arthur in Great Britain, or whether Patrick was merely a fictitious name used by those in Ireland who look to the coming of Attila as Antichrist. And we have this amazing, and here again, we're talking about the royal family in England. Do we have reason to believe that they are tied at the deepest level with these Nephilim-like characters? But John, just speak to this. This is just amazing.
Yeah, man, it was really interesting read, and I read so much on that era and that time period and that whole thing surrounding Arthur and Merlin and all that. In this same book that David is presenting here, the Attila, the King of the Huns, it talks about the possibility that Attila and King Arthur actually might be the same person. And so I dug into this information, and I found the achievements of King Arthur. I also found the achievements of Attila the Hun. It just so happens that the achievements are pretty much identical as far as what they achieved. And it is impossible to me to prove that they're not the same person, but it's also impossible to prove it. But it's interesting because at one time, Attila the Hun actually had control and was paid tribute by every nation that traded in the Silk Route, every nation that traded along that whole Asian area and everything in between. I mean, right in between, even had strongholds in England to the point, and a lot of people say he never made it to England, but I'm wondering that if he made it to England, but he changed his name as to King Arthur, and so he could promote this idea of this grandiose, chivalrous character that needs to be allowed to have, I guess, genealogy and kingship from here on out, because that's kind of what happened. You know, they've got the age of chivalry, which most of the books and most of the stuff about King Arthur that is written, you can't find very much history on that other than looking at the history of the royals of England, the kings of England. And when you look at that, you look at that lineage, when it gets to that part of the book, when it gets to the part to where they've pretty much been ravaged by Huns, they've been ravaged by giants, according to this book, they've been ravaged by the Assyrians, everybody around them has been ravishing them. They're looking to Rome for help. Rome's not going to help them. And then this kind of hero arises out of King Arthur. And when this hero arises, you see all of these interesting stories that take place. And I know David is going to be talking about some of them here, but man, it's really interesting. And there's definitely no doubt that through the genealogies of the people of England, the kings of England, that they mix in with all of these bloodlines. And they say it themselves. We're not really we're not slandering people. We're not even making up conspiracies about them. This is within their own lineage that they are attached to some of these serpent, quote unquote, serpent bloodlines. It's pretty amazing. But this whole book right here, I definitely, I've read several books on the subject. This one was pretty good, and it's not a hard read. The only thing I don't like about the book, David, is there's no page numbers. I hate that.
It's really sectioned off difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth the effort.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And you weren't insulting Attila by calling him the Antichrist. He said, yeah, I'm the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And his plan was to go to England and destroy Christianity in England. And it's believed that, and by many, that just like John said, the King Arthur scenario was a psyop by Attila to prepare the Britons to receive him as the Antichrist. Yeah. It was and at that time, the Druids held sway there, and of course that'd be just some red meat for them to believe that.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, one thing too, David, just to point out the sword thing and the sword and the stone idea.
Yeah.
That's Attila the Hun. They worshipped the sword. They worshipped that, and they would even offer sacrifices around this sword that was in this stone.
Yeah, King Arthur had Excalibur.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it matches, and even if maybe Attila was King Arthur, we don't know, but we know there's a close association here with the story of Attila and this whole area there. It's very, very interesting. And what's also interesting, and you just wouldn't think this is how things should be, but there are not just a few churches there in the British Isles that have giants buried in the church graveyard. And the church graveyard, you should have grandma and grandpa out there and have a nice stone for them, but you shouldn't have 14-foot giants in your church graveyard. But we're going to show you that there are gaggles of churches in the British Isles that to this day have giants in their graveyard. Now, this is one right here. This is the Reator St. Clement's Church, and this is an actual photo of the giant's grave. And all of these churches have detailed stories about the history of their giants and how they interacted with the people and all of this. I mean, this is so deeply rooted in the culture in this area that, I mean, it's just a deep, deep part of their heritage. And here's another one. This is the giant's grave at Penrith. And this is the St. Andrew's Church at Penrith here in England. Now, you notice here they have the two like obelisk type structures there on the end. And note here, look at the top stone here. What do you see? You see the spiral. There we have the spiral on this giant's grave. And like I say, this spiral, you can see that there's a close-up of the spiral on the giant's grave at Penrith here in the British Isles. And this is just the smaller signature of the hinge. So there it is. I mean, it is just not just a few of these, but there are a lot of these. And I mean, these are not little. There's one here. Here's a drawing of what is called the Saint B Giant. And this is from the book by Mr. Vieira and Mr. Newman. And this guy was a 13.5-foot giant. And there's another one. I mean, we're talking 14, 15 feet tall. And yeah, we got them out here in the church graveyard. Yeah, and there you go. So, the evidence of the Nephilim giants in this area in the British Isles, it is so steeped in their culture that we have every reason to believe that this carries right in to the royal family. And indeed, these were the ones. We're going to show you some direct evidence from their own literature that this is the case. And we also did another midnight ride on the tribe of Dan. And we conclusively tied in the tribe of Dan with the Merovingian bloodline. And the Merovingians, they were one of the stock bloodlines that is intermarried with all of the European royalty. And we tied this directly to the tribe of Dan and the Nephilim. It's not just maybe they are absolutely soaked with Nephilim DNA. Now, something else that is kind of strange, like Taylor Swift's Missing Eye is strange. But many of these royal bloodlines, they would even have brother and sister marry because they wanted to preserve the purity of that blood. And some of the paintings of these European royals, I mean, they look strange. We're looking strange looking folk, because they would actually incestuously marry to perpetuate the purity of that blood. And we've in the past, we've pulled in quotes from Lawrence Gardner. And Lawrence Gardner, who has written and maintained that this interbreeding in these royal bloodlines, this has been going on till thousands of years BC. They have been maintaining and building these bloodlines, and they guard it with the utmost unholy sanctity.
Even in Ezekiel 29:3, it calls Pharaoh the great dragon of the river. He made his own river, and he calls him that. And if you look at some of these pictures of these pharaohs, and you look at their body shape, their structure, man, they have a really unique structure that almost a male-female type mix. And if you remember some of the shows that we did, we talked about that ideology where some of the angels were actually hermaphroditic, and they had two sexes, which meaning they could procreate with themselves, reproducing themselves, virtually living forever. And this was the ideology behind that. But sometimes I wonder, when I look at these Egyptian kings and I look at Ezekiel 29, where it says, literally calls them a dragon. That's interesting to me.
It is. And we just recently, one of our very recent midnight rides on Peru, and we were talking about the absolute fact that, there have been bodies found there that the DNA tests prove they got non-human DNA in them. And we showed the little fella Albert, this body that was found in Peru, and Albert had no sexual organs. He was literally asexual. And I believe, and we showed there the Nazca line that looked just like little Albert. There was Albert and Maria, and these different little creatures that were found in Peru. And they were real bodies, and they had non-human DNA in them. These are just the facts that the powers that be don't want us to try to process and figure out what's going on here. But we have every reason to believe that, factual reason. And we're going to show another, this is on the Rothesay on the Isle of Butte, a little video of the big man walking parade. So this is another one of the local giant legends that is just so deeply rooted in the culture. But just watch the big man go. There he goes. And look on his head. He's got a little pentagram on his head.
Notice he's blue too. A lot of the Hindu gods, little G, are actually blue as well. And blue kind of denotes dead too. Denotes dead. When you die, you turn blue. It's really interesting, man. A lot of these giants are depicted blue.
Yeah, and this is a big deal. I mean, this is so steeped in the culture in this area that it's just undeniable. They're just all about it. And there the big guy goes, the big man walking over there in England. Watch the big man go.
And there's another video too, David, that I thought you were talking about before, was a China giant. Have you seen that one where it's a big kind of chunky China giant walking down the street? They do those over there as well.
Yes, I have. Absolutely. And there's no doubt about it. Now, this is a book. And if you look down there at the bottom, by golly, this is edited by John Pounders and Adam Ybarra. Imagine that.
Man.
How about that? Now, this book is one that Now You See TV has reprinted, and it's The History of Gog and Magog, the Champions of London by John Galt. And can you order this off the website, John?
You can order it off of either Amazon or off one of the links in the description, trutherfit.com. They're actually cheaper right now. They're on sale on trutherfit.com. So if you go in the links below, you can get it there. It's cheaper than you can get it on Amazon. So if you want to get it, check it out. Awesome artwork by Adam. I mean, he's the guy that does most of our thumbnails and intros, and he did an amazing job of bringing this story to life. And I'm really, really fond of it, actually.
I'm fond of it also. And I'm fond of Adam. And Adam Ybarra and Brian Reese are now doing a regular weekly broadcast on FOJC Radio every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Central, Drawing Living Waters. You'll have to check that out. It's unique. I call it Sanctified Bob Ross. That's what I call it. And it's just really unique. You're just not going to see anything quite like this anywhere. So I'm very thankful that that's a part of our network. And let's just read a little bit. And this is just one of these books that has slipped through the cracks, that fills in the history here of the British Isles and of the very close association that they have with the giants. And I'll just read a little bit from this book. This is from chapter 2, and it's entitled, How Humbug the Giant Fell in Love with the Beautiful Princess Londonia, like London, Londonia. And you know the old expression, bah humbug, which is big in Britain. One of them, I love those British expressions like the porkies and tickety-boo. They just kind of lodge in my mind, and I have to repeat them for some reason. I don't know why, but I just love the way they talk and the little clever sayings that they have. But we'll just read a little bit about Princess Londonia and Humbug the Giant. It says here, and this is on page 21, one fine summer's day, as Humbug was taking a stroll by himself, meditating on the benevolence of nature, greatly astonished, and he comes on this charming Londonia, and it says, greatly astonished at the splendor of her beauty, he thought proper to fall desperately in love with her, not aware that she could never return his passion, for she was the daughter of a king whom he had himself dethroned and murdered. Whoops, Humbug had already killed her daddy, but he was in love with Londonia, and you can't keep a good giant down. On page 22, the rest of the story, the kind of the way it ends up, it says, before she could recover herself, the giant came up, and seizing her by the hair, carried her to his gloomy abode, and threw her into a dark dungeon in the hope of thereby gaining her affections. This, of course, is the direct history and the legend of the British Isles, where they readily admit in all of their literature and their legends and their history that giants did indeed breed with the British royal, with the very princess whom London was named after. That, and of course, this is just for those of you, and we know we're very, very thankful that we have new listeners all the time. And a lot of you, if you're coming out of mainline churches, or you've been in, went even to a mainline Bible school, you were probably taught that the sons of God in the 6th chapter of Genesis, that these were the sons of Seth. But indeed, they were not. They were the fallen angels that chose to meet with human women. And we're going to have this scripture. This scripture will be, it'll be pulled up after this video. But so we'll wait then to read that scripture and go into that. But that's what we're talking about. This is obvious. I mean, it talks in Genesis chapter 6 about them taking their wives. Well, here we have Humbug the giant. Well, we'll grab her by the hair and we'll just drag her down to the cave. Okay. You know, this is so obviously the continuation of that Genesis 6 scenario, embedded in the very deepest part of the culture and heart, warp and whoop of British royalty.
It's interesting too, David. Humber the Hun was what I believe that he was a Hunnish king who took over Albany basically at the time, and I think that it might be referring to this guy, but they have a river named after him, and it's interesting, man. Like, so when you look at Gog and Magog, just to kind of show how important it is in there, in that book it talks about this, but we're getting ready to watch a video that David's got up here about the Lord and the Lord Mayor show. These people are hailed in the hall there, and they are very important figures to the Lord Mayor show.
Yeah, they absolutely were. And something else that is just deeply fascinating, and it's not a coincidence that in this area there are so many names that have Og in them, that have, and I've got a list of them here somewhere, but I mean, there is a bunch of them where in this area in the British Isles, literally, it's got Og in the name. So, you know, these things are not, they're not coincidental. But here's a little bit we've talked about this before, and I'm sure that a lot of people don't know that in the City of London, and the City of London is different from London. And what's called the City of London, it's independent and separate. And in the City of London, this is where the Mother Lodge of all Freemasonry exists. This is where the Bank of England, run by the British Rothschilds, exists, right here in the City of London. The head of Universal Freemasonry, the head of finance, is right here in the City of London. Not London proper, but a total separate entity. And they have the Lord Mayor of London. And every year, what you going to do? Well, we're going to have us a little Gog-Magog parade. They love Gog and Magog. They love their giants. And they have a little giant celebration every year. And let's just watch a little bit of this and see how the Brits get down with old Gog and Magog. There you go. And it's just like the other festivals. This is the biggest and the most famous. But there's all kinds of little festivals. Yeah, there you go. That's old Magog. We got old Gog and Magog. There they go. And it's a big deal. And, you know, this is there where the most powerful people in Freemasonry and in finance are right here. And they love it. And they know. They know what's going down. You know, they know the guys in the know and in the go. They absolutely know what's going on with this.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of this too, you know, when you look at kind of the worship of these giants, and you see the amount of effort and money and stuff that's gone into magnifying these beings, and you look at Gog and Magog according to prophecy in the Bible, and you see what all of that means, and the possible saving of the City of London. What does that mean? What do they owe? What does London owe to these giant bloodlines? I mean, I did a show not too long ago that a lot of people saw because it's really prominent right now. Charles just became king, and there are those, Tim Cohen to be exact, that have written a book, and other people have written a book on the idea that he might actually be the Antichrist. And so when we look at stuff like this book that we decided to remaster because there was no really good copies of it, so we decided to remaster this Gog and Magog book. And this book has so much metaphorical history in it that it's amazing to me, because when I was looking in that, I was able to find remnants of history that were equated to that. A lot of people wrote in that style back then because there was a great persecution for speaking about true things. And sometimes when people wrote in fiction and wrote in these ways, that it really brought out the story in a way that people could read it, but they also could possibly understand it in the future. And it's really interesting. The name John Galt, which was the original author, is also a character in Atlas Shrugged, which is really interesting too. So there's a mystery there with this whole book that I was just, enamored with, I guess.
Yeah. And the John Galt that wrote this book came before the Ayn Rand book, Atlas Shrugged, and the mover and the shaker in that is John Galt. So, you know, these things are messages.
Yeah.
These things are messages by the elite. And I like books like this one because it's a piece of history. And we, as our British friends would say, we are being told porkies. They're telling us porkies, my friend, and we know that we're being lied to by the powers that be about history, about even the way that our earth and the world we live in is. We're being told many, many porkies, and the truth is out there, and you can unravel it. And these things have been buried and suppressed, so I greatly value that. I love to get books like this because you can peel back the onion and you can discern the lies of the trail of the serpent that he has perpetuated upon us.
Interestingly enough, too, the humbug, that word humbug, that is the first time that I could find that word mentioned in any literature, even before the Christmas Carol written. The word was written before that in that book, which is really interesting to me. I don't know why, but it is. It's really cool because I always wondered what humbug meant. Where did that come from?
Yeah. And it's just like there's just something that strikes down in the heart of us that say, yeah, we just know that there's a basis of truth behind this. We just somehow intrinsically know this. Now we're going to read, and like I say, we've got, I'm sure, new listeners tonight. We're so thankful. Welcome to the Midnight Ride. I hope we haven't scared you to death. But you'll find us saying things here on the Midnight Ride that you'll not hear anyone else say. But if you listen and if you look and you do a little digging, you'll find that we don't talk off the top of our head here. That when we come to conclusions, they're conclusions based in fact. And there are many times we have to admit, well, you know, this is our opinion. We can't conclusively prove it, but we've got a lot of evidence that points this way, and maybe we might want to consider this. Now, there are things that are not theoretical, and that's the Word of God. The Word of God gives us the concrete revelation of it is how we understand history. It's how we understand the world that we live in. And for many of our new listeners, the story of Humbug and Londonia, this is the story of the ongoing saga of the Genesis 6 scenario. And let's read Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4. And as I say, for many of you that are in mainline churches, you're being told that the sons of God were the sons of Seth. And this sadly is taught in most of the Bible schools. You know, it's very, very sad. And this is not even debatable biblically. I mean, this is just a slam dunk that we're talking about the angels mating with human women. But Genesis 6 and 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And let's read verse 2. I'm going to read verse 2 here. Let's just go to the top of Genesis 6. Let's just read a little bit here. Genesis 6 and 1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, and we can prove that refers to angels. We find it in Job, the 38th chapter. We also find it in the first chapter of the book of Job. And every reference from Jewish or the ancient fathers, there was nothing else contrary to taught until, I don't know, it was about 800 or 900 AD before anyone ever started teaching the Sethite theory. But it says in verse 2, that the sons of God, the angels, the fallen angels, saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took. And they took them wives, of all which they chose, just like old Humbug chose Ladonia. Well, we'll grab you by the hair, and how do you like McCabe here? You know, and this is literally just explicitly what we see here going on in the history of the British royals. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renowned. So this is how we process information. We believe that the Bible has answers to the way that things are, to the way that things were, and to the way that things shall be. And when we look at these mysteries that we have, we begin to realize very quickly as we begin to study and peel the onion that indeed we have been told porkies. But we also, with the Word of God, we can come to much understanding and revelation about the way that things really are and about the things that we will soon see coming upon this good old flat earth.
Amen to that. And what an awesome broadcast, David. Thank you for presenting that information, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it, and hopefully I was able to add a little bit of content to it. I don't know, but I did enjoy it just along with you guys. So make sure you subscribe if you liked this content, because we do this every single week, every Saturday at 10 o'clock p.m., and so make sure you guys subscribe. And we do something here we call the Pounder's Pound. You're probably thinking, man, there's a lot of people watching, and only like 1,100, 1,200 people have liked the video. Well, that's because we wait till the end of the video and we like the button all together. We pound it all together, and we count that down. Are you ready, David? Let's do this. 1, 2, 3. Boom. We got it, man. We got it. Thank you guys so much for doing that. We appreciate you guys so much. We could not do this without you. Your support means everything to us, and we're so thankful. David, end us out.
As always, with great thankfulness unto the Lord, and to all of you, our Midnight Ride supporters, and to all of you that are new listeners checking out the Midnight Ride for the first time, thank you so very much. As John say, we could not do what we do without you. So until next Saturday night, 10 p.m. Central, high five and good night, everybody, from the Midnight Ride.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up.